Hey, this is Tracy with the Tracy's Keeping It Real show, sponsored by AARP Minnesota. This afternoon on Tracy's Keeping It Real, we have LaTrisha Vetaw, and she's with the City Council at Minneapolis City Hall. She serves in the North Minneapolis on the City Council. She started her career in public service 20 years ago when she left the corporate world and started working in community health. Director of Health Policy and Advocacy at North Point Health and Wellness at the time of 2006 to 2021. In 2017, LaTrisha was elected for an at-large seat on the Minneapolis Park and Recreation Board, where she served as the vice president and chair of the Intergovernmental and Legislative Committee. In 2022, LaTrisha was sworn into her current position as Ward 4 City Council member, serving as chair of the Public Health and Safety Committee and sits on 6 other committees. Her first year in office, LaTrisha sat on the Mayor's Police Chief Search Committee, selected Minneapolis' first ever Commission of Public Safety, secured $1 million in funding for a community safety partnership, led the Get Lit Minneapolis campaign, resulting in $300,000 in funding for the improved street lighting in North Minneapolis, and repaired years of mistrust between Ward 4 residents and City Council government. And LaTrisha lives with her husband Ronald and their very energetic fur baby Bobby. In their free time, LaTrisha enjoys gardening, seeing the city, taking Bobby for long walks, and traveling. Let's welcome LaTrisha.
Yay.
All right. So
Thank
you got
for having
quite going on here. I love all this wonderful stuff you're doing with the city council and your fur baby. I love the fact that you have a little doggy that you take out walking around.
He's a big boy.
I bet he's not a fur baby anymore, I take it. So welcome.
Thank you for having me, Tracy.
Well, you know what, I love your energy. Your energy reminds me of mine. I've watched you
I love that
on some of the TV footage that you've gotten, and I said I really want to learn more about who this sister is. So tell us your story. What is your story?
So I would say my story starts with I grew up with a single mom. She moved to Minneapolis in the 80s. I came here from Chicago. My mom moved here for a better life, and that's exactly what Minneapolis has been for us since the mid 80s. She came here, 3 kids, this community embraced her, and so I've always felt like I have to give back in Minneapolis through my career in some type of way because this city loved on my mom and her 3 kids. It's a beautiful city. People here can be warm, but they can also be firm. And the north side is where I moved to. North side's like a small town. Everybody knows everybody, but people are direct and people hold you accountable. And so that's why I represent the north side more than anything, is because those are my people. When I knock a door on the north side, every single door, all the contact I make with people, I have something to connect with them on.
Okay. All right. Well, see, and I think that's why the North Side elected you to become their city council person for Ward 4, because they connected with you.
I connected with them for sure. And I still do. I'm in my second term because both of my terms have been 2-year terms. And so I'm at the beginning of my second term, which is a 2-year term. And I was reelected, and I believe I was reelected because people see me as authentic and representative of what they want to see at City Hall for the North Side.
And that is so important, because I think one of the things that we realize that people have different positions in life, and they get elected, or they get voted in, or they get some type of a promotion to get, if they're in corporate. But it's all about, what is your stance, kind of what are you doing that makes people move to want to do that, to give you promotion, to vote you in a second term. What is your mission now that you are in your second term for city council?
I think the biggest thing is representation. I want to show up downtown at City Hall as someone who came from the North Side. I want to have the ability to be me. I'm not like the other 12 council members. I'm different. I have a different personality. I have a different approach. I'm way more direct than most of the people that I serve with. So I think first, I want to make sure that I come to City Hall as my authentic self, because that's who people elected. I don't want to have to, wash down who I am or turn into this like textbook model of what people think an elected official should be. I want to be who I am serving in elected office.
Okay. All right. So you know what? You opened up the doors to my next question. So the Star Tribune recently did an article on the city council, and kind of some of the disgruntled behavior there, and even so much as to where someone in the audience asked Representative Council Member, oh, I'm terrible with names these days.
Ellison.
Ellison, yes, to sit down and be quiet. I mean, what's going on down there? What do we know what the vibe is? Where this is it like disrespectful nowadays, or what's going on?
So I sit next to Councilmember Ellison, and I saw what happened. I was there in real time. Him and Al Flowers had a back and forth. Well, mostly Councilmember Ellison said something to um, Al Flowers. And you can see on the video, I took Councilmember Ellison off the dais because I didn't know where things were going to go. I don't think it's disgruntled. I think, or there's this level of, like disrespect that we can't fix. I think in this new term, leadership is different. It's frustrating. People have different leadership styles. We were led by Andrea Jenkins the last term. She's a very fair person. She's reasonable. She's one of the sweetest people I've ever met in my life. She listens to everyone. And I think this adjustment to having a new council president and a council vice president and starting the term out with a ceasefire resolution that really divided this community had some of us just kind of on edge. And I think Councilmember Ellison, well, I'm not making excuses for him, but I just think in that moment with him, there was some other things that were at play that really weren't about Al.
Okay, okay, and Al just kind of caught the bug
Yeah,
in the
I,
bed
I
or
think I
something.
think that Al just maybe trigger something for him in that moment. But what I know about us at City Hall is that it's just been a huge transition under new council leadership, and especially starting out with something that divisive. Like we started the term with dividing the Jewish community from the Palestinian community. Lots of Jewish residents reached out and said this ceasefire resolution, it's not okay. It feels terrible. If like it feels like we have to suffer in this city of Minneapolis as Jewish residents if you all pass this.
Okay,
And then Al was there specifically about the Merwin liquor store license. And so that's another heated topic, and that's in the Black community. On West Broadway, this liquor store has been problematic. I've never seen um, our community show up like they did to speak about their experiences with the Merwin liquor store, the parking lot, just that corridor on Broadway and Lindale.
mm-hmm.
And so I think residents had a different expectation about that vote, like with that liquor license being issued. And so then that heightened things even more for Al and probably Jeremiah, since he's the council member who oversees that particular liquor license and liquor store.
And so just speak just briefly about that for our viewers and listeners that don't know that issue on that corner. Talk about a little bit about what
So on
the
Broadway and
community was upset about.
Right. So Broadway and Lindale in North Minneapolis, I mean, the gas station is called the Murder Station. And then right across the street from the Murder Station, we have the Merwin Liquor Store where I mean, I heard from people who have lost loved ones in the parking lot of that liquor store. I heard from people who said, I just don't want to see this in my neighborhood, how people gather and just all of the things that are happening over there. We had a Walgreens over there, and the Walgreens left. There's a Cub Food over there, so there's some activity from people. There's a lot of addiction on Broadway in that corridor, and you see it, rather it's drugs or alcohol. The liquor store, you see a lot of people just kind of sitting out in the parking lot all day, every day. And so community showed up and said, we no longer want this. We don't want this to be a part of our neighborhood. We've lost loved ones in this liquor store parking lot. We've it's so much trauma that you feel even when you drive through that corridor. The expectation was that the city would start doing the work of getting rid of it.
Okay, okay, and that's not what they were seeing. That's why they were upset.
Right. And it
Got it.
was an entire community there that was upset. But Al Flowers has been working on this for years.
Okay.
And so I think when he realized what was happening, because the vote went so quickly, I think when he realized what happened, we just saw a natural reaction to somebody who cares. Al yelled out, "We're losing again. The black community is losing again."
Okay.
Yep.
All right. All right. Yeah, that's too bad when that happens. So with Merwin's, I know that's not far from downtown. What do you think about the main street downtown? Do you think it's a healthy and it's successful down there?
I mean, we have a lot of work to do downtown Minneapolis. Downtown Minneapolis is the financial engine of the whole city, and I'm down there almost every day, and it's empty. There's not stores down there like it used to be. If you're down there at night, people aren't out enjoying things like it was in the 90s when we had like Glam Slam and, 30, 40 restaurants you can go into. You got multiple nightclubs. It's just not that way anymore. And a lot of it does have to do with public safety, which is the number one issue I hear from people throughout the entire city, especially on the north side. But then I would say downtown is second. People downtown talk about public safety. They talk about different shootings or different incidents that are happening down there. So we have a lot of work to do around public safety and a lot of work to do around economic development, because those businesses just aren't in those tall buildings anymore like they used to be.
They've all packed up and left. So what are your ideas to change that?
I think some of the things we can do is look at like what companies want to be inside of buildings. During the pandemic, we went to this working from home and people like it. And I think if you want to work from home, you should work from home. But there's still companies and businesses that don't want to work from home. So where are those companies at? How do we get them to come to downtown Minneapolis? Because we know, okay, when they're at work, they're going to go buy lunch. They're more than likely to go to a game or a concert. They're going to go shopping. Uh, Me and my team, we were so sad when they closed the Nordstrom Rack downtown, because that was like our thing to do after a council meeting.
Yeah, go shop.
Yeah, after the trauma of some of those council meetings, we'd be like, "Oh, let's go buy something." And that makes you feel better. Or we find a good restaurant and pick different things. So I think, building up housing downtown is one part of it, but also figuring out what businesses want to be back.
Okay, yeah, yeah, and that makes sense. I mean, if you're down there and you don't want to be, you're going to be trying to figure out how to get out. So
Right.
that's not helping. So what's more important in your opinion? That we talk about our city right now building new homes and commercial space or rehabbing existing, better utilizing our existing homes and storefronts that we currently have.
Yeah, we definitely have to continue to do that work, especially in Ward 4 where I represent. I represent the most northern part of the city, and a lot of our commercial corridors have lost the buildings, or like the building needs to be restored. So we're doing a lot of work to try to get more housing in my ward, and that's multi-housing. That's senior apartments or senior condos, something like that, versus just like one kind of affordable housing. We have a lot of seniors in my ward that don't want to leave, but they're not going to sell their house. They live there because they don't have anywhere to transition to. They don't have condos, and they don't have the choice of buying a condo. And they can afford to buy a condo, especially if they sell their homes, but we don't have that. And so I want to do that kind of work in particular in Ward 4.
So that you mean you want to build more condos?
I want to build more multi-housing units.
Okay.
For people to transition. If you want to sell your house, you have some. I mean, most people say, I want to continue to, hang out with these neighbors. I want to go to this church. I want to go to this grocery store. And if you've gotten to an age where you say, I'm tired of cutting grass, I just want some really cool amenities like a hot tub and, a swim pool and a sauna, um, I want us to have that in North Minneapolis for people to transition to. I don't want them to have to move to Northeast or to move to Robbinsdale or Golden Valley.
A whole new community that they don't know people in and they're not comfortable.
Exactly.
And they live their whole life learning that community they're currently in and now they have to move if they want something better. So that makes sense to want. So you are more inclined to want to do more building of that type of home ownership versus rehabbing some of this old property that's still sitting.
I think we'll do that too because we want new families too, right? So like some of those older properties, we want to get them purchased by first-time homeowners. We want to have people, purchase the homes, fix them up, and the city has programs where we can help folks with first-time home buyer money, also with rehabbing, and there's lots of programs, state, county, federal programs. So we want to do that. We definitely want to make sure that the homes in the ward, and I have a lot of single family homes in Ward 4, majority single family homes. And so we want to make sure that they're kept up. We want to make sure that people are purchasing them and moving into them. We don't want corporate landlords, taking over 500 properties. And then if they decide to sell them, we got 500 homes for sale in North Minneapolis because that previously happened in 2008, 2009. And so right now there's a lot of one company in particular who has a lot of houses for sale. And so we're trying to make sure that they're owner occupied. And so, yeah, we definitely want home ownership, first time home buyers. That's great. But in addition to that, I want to build up the ward, with different kinds of housing.
Okay. And so how does that look in a 2-year period
think in
that
the
you have?
I think in the 2-year period, what you do is you build relationships with developers. You say, we welcome you over here. We want you to look at these vacant lots we have on Lowry and Penn as an opportunity to build, right? Like that's one place that just comes to mind because there's like a lot of vacant lots there and there's a lot of traffic there that is only there because they're vacant lots. If there was housing or something there, people wouldn't just stand outside and have their daily parties, right? Like they
Right.
would maybe stay in their own backyard or go to the park or something. But there's these open vacant lots for them to just like,
Hang out.
yeah, hang out all day, do whatever. And so I want to make the ward appealing. A lot of the things that I hear from people too on the north side is just like basic livability issues like trash and garbage cleanup and snow removal. So all of those things we got to make sure we're doing that so that developers are like, this is a great part of the city and we want to come over here.
Okay. And you got to entice them to want to be
Yeah,
there.
I think so.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think that's a part of it. I mean, I think as a council member, my job is to sell to developers like this is the place to be.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
And
Right.
then if they build housing and have commercial space on the bottom, that's even better.
Yeah.
Because now we have opportunity for small businesses, for more grocery stores, for more, opportunities for people in the neighborhood in place.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So speaking of that, now we got, if we get that, how do you feel about the transportation options currently that are available in your city? And then also, can residents afford to get where they're going without that transportation?
Well, the options now are the bus in North Minneapolis. There's been a lot of conversations about the light rail. I'm not a fan of the most recent light rail route proposal. Um, I personally think we've missed the window for the light rail in North Minneapolis, and I would rather focus on bus rapid transit. So, like, some of the major corridors having regular buses coming 24 hours a day before I would think that we need the light rail at this point.
Okay.
I think the money that could be invested in the light rail could definitely be invested in some other modes of transportation for North Minneapolis.
So what other than busing and the light rail, what is there another mode that you might
I mean,
recommend?
not really at this point. People in on the north side like cars, like to drive, right? Like that is like I find myself getting into conversations with people around like having a car is a status thing in communities of color. Like nobody's excited to ride a bike. That's like child's play to most people.
Yeah, I don't see
You
too
know,
many people on bikes when
right?
I go into the inner city neighborhoods. I don't.
I mean, because like we see that as I'm a child, I ride a bike, it's fun, I'm out with my friends. That would be an entire culture shift for the people I represent to think about. Um, I'm gonna ride this bike around all these bike lanes in North Minneapolis and not get a car. I mean, it's just not a thing.
What is your thought even on that? Because some people in our community say that they have traffic problems, one way, a lot of one ways, and you mentioned bike lanes. What do you think? How would it migrate these concerns and changing this situation? Maybe I don't know if they're not riding the bikes. Is it to not have so many one ways? Is that possible? Is it to take the bike lanes out of the streets? What are your thoughts on that?
Tracy, this is such a good question. I think that yes, some of the bikeways need to be taken out of some streets. Do I think we need bike lanes in some places? Absolutely.
Like Plymouth or Plymouth. There's a lot of bike lanes
Yeah.
in that, and if we're not riding bikes, why are we taking up all that street space?
Right. And I think that's what we have to do better at. We have to look at when we do put bike lanes in, is this benefiting this community, or are we just like putting them in and leaving them there for the community to deal with? I also think, I like one-way streets. I personally do because the number of police officers we have are down. And so we don't have police out like 10 years ago, just like if you reported high traffic, speeding on the block, we don't have the ability to have a speed trap just set up, on Laurie to catch people speeding. So I like one ways in residential neighborhoods in particular because that does slow down some of the traffic. And back to your original point around like what are some of the transportation things I'd like to see? I'd like to see more traffic calming because we're dealing with a lot of speeding, a lot of running red lights and stop signs. People don't stop anymore, causes accidents. So I'd like to see a lot of that money invested in speed bumps or roundabouts or more red lights, or more stop signs. There's the need for the request that we get at the city for people who want to see like some type of traffic calming measure on their block is more than we can afford right now.
Okay.
And so I'd love to see like money that would be invested in bringing the light rail in redirected to neighborhoods where people want to see traffic calming and traffic lights that give you a ticket if you speed through it, or speed cameras that catch you speeding and automatically give you a ticket. That type of technology is how we're going to make up for our loss of police officers who traditionally have done that work.
And are we planning on having that? Did I hear some
Yes.
conversation around that?
Yes. So the traffic cameras, we've put that on the city's legislative agenda. I don't know how this is gonna shake out, but because some of the council members don't like it, some do. So we'll see what happens. We previously had them, and they took them all out. There was a ruling by the Minnesota Supreme Court that they were unjust and they were targeting certain communities because originally they started in like high accident areas. So they were on Broadway and Lindale, but there's a lot of accidents on Broadway and Lindale, so they kind of started them in those neighborhoods. So then it was seen as, like targeting communities of color. But we need them. And I'm just going to tell you, communities of color tell me they need them more than anybody else.
Right, okay.
People in the communities of color say, get us some traffic lights out here, right? Just like with police. People in communities of color say, no, 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 we need the police, right? And so
Gotta have somebody protecting us and looking out for us.
that's right. And so if you understand that we're not at that number, what's next? Like, what can you do to help? Like, you can only tell people for so many times, we're down police. They're like, okay, you knew that last time we talked. What you gonna do about it?
Right.
And so, these traffic cameras, technology in general is the next step for people.
Well, it will certainly help, but I think it is. I understand the community in terms of thinking that everything is. It feels, I think, that they feel that it's all racially set up,
Yeah.
and in some cases it might be, but in this case, when we know we're down on police and we need something else that's going to help, I hate roundabouts, but if that
Somebody else just told me that
if they work to slow traffic down, I'm assuming that's the
yes,
point in having them.
yes,
Because
yes.
I never could figure out why you have them until
Yes.
you just mentioned it kind of controls the traffic. I'm like, all these things.
So it's meant to slow you down because you got to turn.
Yeah.
Around. You're not just taking that straight shot. Just last night, I had a conversation with someone who said, if you could get rid of all those roundabouts, I would love. I was like, well, I don't know how much you're gonna love me because I would never do that.
Yeah, right. I mean,
The bike lanes I can help you
yeah, you
with,
can help
but
with
the
that.
roundabouts we need those.
Well, and I guess if again, understanding the purpose in them helps you to halfway
Yeah,
understand that you kind of. I think that's it's education. I think
yeah,
everything we do is educating the community on things, and that's why we exist here at the MSR. Is really trying to help educate the community on things that they need to be impacted by, that they are impacted by. And roundabouts, if you realize that they're there to slow traffic down, maybe then it makes you have a little bit more compassion for having to go around them. Aside from the fact that you deal with a bunch of people that don't know it's their turn to yield, so there's a there's a problem in itself there.
yep.
But I get it.
Yeah,
So
people really do care though, and people want to, like you just said, the education piece. People want to learn. What my job is as a council member is to teach or to make sure that people understand why we are getting more roundabouts. Because most people say, "I want speed bumps." And the city really doesn't put speed bumps in as much in previous years, but that's what's common for people, right? Speed bumps are going to slow down traffic, but speed bumps are hard on emergency vehicles.
while
It's
they trying to
right,
trace you, they
yeah,
got to slow down
exactly.
too.
Right. Or when the fire trucks come in because of the weight and
Mm.
how big they are, the speed bumps are really bad for ambulances and fire trucks, right? And so like we've went to this roundabout, we went to roundabouts and those bollards. Now those bollards, the the little sticks that's
I couldn't understand them either. I'm like, what are these things for? They are another nuisance they done put in the street.
I kind of agree with that.
What do they? How are they supposed to work? I don't get it.
You're supposed to go around them, but most
Oh,
people hit them.
and knock them over,
Yeah,
and so
right.
and they're easy to run over.
Yeah.
So that didn't work. So they can take them down because all
Well,
they are is a nuisance.
I agree with that. Or
Yeah,
get something that's not gonna be like
I
it's like a
bet you if they
video
put some
game.
slow ones up, ain't nobody gonna be running.
Exactly.
But then they'll be suing the
Di-
city for tearing up their cars
Exactly. But it's like a video game. I've seen someone just like boop 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 knock them all down.
just intentionally.
I
Well,
don't know,
because
but
they
they
probably
did it.
get they probably sick of looking at them. I get it.
Yes,
I get it.
people get frustrated over those. And
I do. I
and
kept wondering what are these things for? They're such a nuisance. But now I know.
But see, that also lets me know we have to do a better job as a city communicating what happens, and what frustrates people more than anything is exactly what you said, Tracy. You wake up, there's a roundabout, you don't even know why it's there.
No. And all you know is it's a pain because now you got to go around and hope that other person slows down. It feels like it's a nuisance
Right.
versus a safety hazard.
And it's meant to be it's meant to help with safety. And we just have to do better at like explaining that to people.
I
I'm
think
telling
when
you,
you
make
know,
great points.
it's all about knowing.
Yep.
And if we know what we know, then we're more likely to be okay with it. But when we don't know and it just looks like the city has got money to burn and we don't understand what they're doing with it by putting these things up on the street and in these neighborhoods, and it's like, what are these things?
Mhm.
So tell me though, LaTrisha, now if you could change one thing in the zoning code, what would it be and why?
Huh. I don't know. I never really thought about that. If I could change one thing, that's a big question.
That's a
We
big
may have
question.
to come back
We
to
can
that.
come back to that.
Yeah, because I guess I don't think about zoning as much.
Well, I'll tell you what, I'm gonna give you a chance to do that next time we
Okay.
sit down and talk.
No.
So we'll come back to that. We're gonna come back to that.
Okay.
Cause you might ask me a question right now. I'll be like, oh, I never really thought
Yeah,
about that.
I really haven't. I don't really
Cause you got so much else you're thinking about.
yeah, probably. And just like I don't get many requests for like zoning stuff.
Okay.
Like when constituents talk to me, I don't really have I'm trying to think of anything that we'll come back to it.
Okay, we will.
Okay.
Now, so talking about these different things that are going on in the community and talking about the roundabouts and different things like that, how, or even the bike trails, how do you plan on getting more residents involved in the decision making process so that if the bike things are not needed in your ward, that you can get them involved to make it change so the bike lanes aren't put there. If you're if your constituents think, well, we don't need these, how can you get them involved to make that change?
So one of the things I pride myself on being is a council member who engages with my constituents. Like, it's my jam. I love it. I love going to people's houses and talking to them. I love to see things with my own two eyes. I really don't like people to tell me about something. Like, I like to go and see it and experience it. And on 53rd, which is like the border of Brooklyn Center and Minneapolis, we got some bike lanes put there, and the neighbors, we met this guy like right when I got elected the first time, who came to my office with hundreds of signatures. The neighbors were very upset about the bike lanes that went in. And so what I, after meeting with them, like my office set up a community meeting to discuss with the neighbors what they wanted to see, and what they felt like was happening to them, and if they got a chance to participate in the process or not. And they didn't. They weren't happy with it. They didn't think they had a chance to participate in the process. So now it's my job as a council member to talk to the Public Works Department.
Okay.
And so this last year, Public Works put some cameras out there so we could get some footage of what the neighbors said they were experiencing, and they were spot on. Exactly what they said. Crashes, people driving the wrong way because they didn't understand. I mean, the bike lanes are wide, so it feels like a car should go down.
That's what I was thinking on Plymouth. It's like, gee, is this a car or a bike? Which one?
Plymouth is another one. So engagement is, I think, the beginning of engagement is having an open door.
Okay.
Making people feel like it's okay to talk to my council member about this. And if it's something that she can help me with, she will. And if it's something that Amy Klobuchar or Bobby Joe Champion or Representative Fooley should be helping me with, she'll direct me to them. So I think that's the first thing, is we have to engage folks. We have to make them feel like, they can contact you and that you're listening, right? Like, I don't live on 53rd, but the people who live on 53rd have opinions, and I take that serious. So I think just having an open door policy, I'm the only council member who has an office in my ward, and I'm there every Friday. And I'm pretty sure I'm over here on the Friday. We've missed 4 or 5 of our regulars who've knocked on the door to come, to come in and sit down and talk to us about what's going on in the ward, in the community, what their needs are. And it's good and it's bad. It's not always bad things.
Right. Well, I know one of the things you mentioned, and it's like when people come to you with different concerns, and it's addressing whether it's something you deal with or whether it's Klobuchar or somebody else dealing with it. I think that's a whole nother process of educating the community that we could do a better job at. It's like, because, it's a lot of everyday people don't know everything you're responsible for. They don't. So how do you weigh in on problems that you have if you don't know who to take them to? So I think that's a whole nother conversation that we could have one day.
Absolutely.
Just to kind of talk about what is the role of the city council, and what is it that people need to come to you about, and then what power do you have in terms of making a decision on your own versus needing the whole city council body to weigh in, and then where does the mayor come in? So there's a lot of different conversations that Tracey's Keeping It Real would like to talk about, so that we make sure that we're keeping it real with our audience, so they know who's on first and who's on second, because that to me is important. And although I talk about that all the time with my staff, to say we need to, when it comes time for election time, let's say what these people do. And I think they're looking at me like, everybody knows that. And I'm like, everybody doesn't know that.
No, not at all.
Everybody doesn't know what city council, what they're responsible for. So educating every time that it's that time, so people can make informed decisions, and then just educating people, so if there's something wrong with their streets or their lights on their streets or anything going on, that they know who to talk to, and they know to come to LaTrisha to make sure that problem gets solved.
And she will. Like, I love saying, no, this is Bobby Joe's. Let me give you his contact information. Or even, I'll set up a meeting with Senator Champion with his office and my office, if someone needs, like they don't really still get it after you tell them it's him, I'm happy to sit in those meetings for that friendly send off. Organize it with his office, get a group of people from my ward that I know what they want needs to be done by the state and not the city. And it is. People do not really know, like, what does my city council person do versus what is my senator, what is my congressperson. And unfortunately, some of my colleagues on the city council don't even understand like what they should be doing versus what they should be letting, the county do.
Right.
Yeah,
Well, that's one thing we may have to have that conversation so that they utilize the press more, specifically the MSR, to really work with the Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder so that we're able to help them to do their jobs better by letting the community know who's responsible for what.
absolutely.
The community can then go to the right people right off the bat and not waste your time or somebody else's time and or their own time coming after you for something that you don't even deal with.
Yeah, and I really don't feel like they waste my time. I'm so happy to say this is, let's reach out to our county commissioner or whomever, because the other thing is, like, your council member feels more attainable to most people. Like, your council member, they live in your neighborhood. You probably see them more. Local things, I think, are, it feels closer to people than, like, well, doesn't Amy Klobuchar go to DC? Like, is she really in Minnesota? But we have an issue in my ward with the train, the Canadian Pacific. Like, we have a line that goes through my ward, and there's days where it's backed up for hours.
Oh.
And school buses are stuck, and when people started reaching out to us about it, we called Amy's office. And she's been helping us out. We've been working with Canadian Pacific. We had cameras out there. We've been working with our public works department. But I let people know right away, like, it wasn't something that I could just fix. Like, we have to engage with these other bodies of government to actually get this done.
Well, and if we know that, then it makes it better because we at least know something can be done, and that's the
At
question.
least on some days.
On some days, I hear you. I hear you. It's been really a pleasure to sit down and just chop it up with you and kind of learn more about what you do and how the passion that you have for the community, and we certainly hope that all the confusion slows down and we're able to just get work done down there at City Council and really be able to do what your job is in order to get it done. So thank you for taking your time out to stop by and sit down with Tracey's Keeping It Real. And until next time, when you want to know what your city council person is doing, make sure to reach out if you're in her ward to her and ask her the questions. Thanks so much for checking in. Until next time, Tracey's Keeping It Real.